My name is Gassia Mikaelian. I'm an anchor and reporter at KTVU Fox 2 News serving the San Francisco Bay Area. I'm happy to welcome a former Bay Area resident now living in Italy to talk about how the coronavirus pandemic has affected daily life there. So, welcome to this talk, Rafael de Furia. You are in the small town of Rovigo. You're a content creator and media advisor. You left beautiful Marin County for Italy about
Mhm.
3 years ago. Tell me, first of all, where you're located and what the town is like.
So I live in a small city called Rovigo. It's in the Veneto region where you will also find Venice. So I live about halfway between Venice and Bologna. Basically, if you were to compare it to the Bay Area, it would be like going from San Anselmo to San Francisco is about how far I am away from Venice.
Okay.
Uh, things here have been, sorry?
No, no, I was going to say you were going to tell me things there have changed. You're now in
Mm,
phase two of the reopening of your town, but you're saying there's not that much difference from phase one.
right. So that was one thing that living through the everyday of it, yes, it is being called phase two, but realistically it hasn't felt so different from phase one. Yes, there are a few more shops open, but we are still pretty limited in what we can do. When we go out, we still have to wear masks. Instead of being limited to staying within 200 meters or 200 yards of our homes, we can now go beyond that, but uh, we still have to remain within our towns. We're not allowed to go from town to town. The nice thing is that we can actually go out. You don't feel as trapped, even though you're still supposed to stay home as much as possible during this time.
I know here in the Bay Area, residents are being told to essentially stay within 3 to 5 miles of their home. Three to
Mhm.
5 miles is a big difference from the extremely close quarters you were told to stay within.
Yeah, it's huge. It takes a mental toll very quickly. I mean, even just thinking about it, it's like basically a block, 2 blocks, practically.
I know I've watched some of your YouTube videos, and you sort of take us around your town. The streets are very empty, but then you came upon, I think, was it a tobacco shop or was it a grocery store? There was a line outside, and people were doing
Right.
social distancing. It was essentially what I see when I go to Trader Joe's.
Right. So if you're talking about the part of the video and the video that I think you're talking about, it was outside of a tobacco store because here in Italy, the tobacco shops not only serve the function of selling cigarettes and cigars and oh, maybe if they have cigars, but you can also go there to pay bills and taxes and so on. So they serve a very necessary function in Italian society. But this has become kind of a new norm that people will have to wait outside of a place where you can go buy food, a deli, restaurants. There's few and far between that are even open right now. But what has also become normal is that, for example, at that tabacceria, only a few people or maybe 1 or 2 people would be allowed in at a time. It depends on how large the space is because you need to be able to still keep that 1 to 2 meters in between people, or even going to buy vegetables. There's a local greengrocers here where they actually have a block at the door so you can't go in there, but you can still see all the vegetables. It's a pretty small place, so it's very easy to see. But they will come to the door and they will bring the vegetables that you ask for. So it's actually that's been quite a almost kind of a nice experience with how the weather's been turning to be quite nice recently. But then going to other types of, say, if you want to grab like a rotisserie chicken, it's also the same type of setup where you have to wait outside on the sidewalk. And so that's something that's been a very big difference in the way things have been functioning, practically speaking. But it has been very nice to see that we have had some of those new allowances opened up because for the longest time at the beginning of this, we had nothing open. Everything was closed. Only supermarkets and pharmacies were allowed to be open.
That sort of situation can create a toll on just daily life, right? But it can
Oh,
also
absolutely.
weigh on your mental health. Once
Mhm.
restrictions started easing a little bit in your town, did people's spirits seem to lift? What's the mood in that sense?
So, in one sense, yes, people have been happy that things have been lifting a little bit. But again, it's for a lot of us, it doesn't feel like that we are out of lockdown yet. We still very much feel that heaviness, that weight on our shoulders. Especially a lot of business owners here are very unhappy with the situation because the majority of businesses are still not allowed to be open. It's only a handful of businesses at this point that are allowed to operate somewhat normally, if you can, relatively speaking here.
Right.
But this has actually caused so much of a discussion here in Italy across the nation that there have been a number of protests. And just as of earlier today, to my understanding, they've actually made a new decision that the rest of the stores and everything else will open up on the 18th of this month. So that's been very welcome in one sense, but on the other hand, I should say, there are people who are worried that maybe it could be a little too soon because the original plan was to do it in gradual stages, first the 18th, then the first of next month. There were a few dates that had been picked out for different types of businesses. So at this point we're excited, but we're also nervous, and but definitely people are very excited to be able to get out on the street and take a walk without having to worry. We still do have to carry our self-certification papers. That's been one thing that's been very annoying for many people, that we actually have to carry a legal document with us saying that we haven't been diagnosed, we haven't this, the reason that we're going out, and so on.
Wow. So that's something we here in California aren't doing. I remember, I was cleaning out my work bag, I think over the weekend. It was almost like a time capsule of when we actually went to the office. And I came across the letter that our news director had written for each one of us personally saying,
Mm.
Garcia Michaelian is a member of KTVU News. She's an
Oh,
essential employee. Please allow her
yeah,
on her way, because I used to drive from my house to the office. I'm working from home now. And I
right.
thought, oh, we used to do that. So it looks like you are still doing that.
Yeah, so the thing is, it's still quite limited with who can go from place to place based on their work. It has to be somebody who serves like a very necessary function. Lawyers are included with this, nurses, doctors, um, but for just the average person, even if you want to go to the supermarket, you have to carry the self-certification document with you.
Wow. I know here in California, we have heard everyone from the governor on down saying, as we start to ease up some restrictions, and parts of our state are now in phase 2, if the coronavirus numbers spike again, we're
Mm,
locking everything back down.
right.
Has that sentiment been put out there in Italy? And have you seen any backtracking on opening up certain aspects of life?
So far, we haven't seen any backtracking, but that is definitely something that the Italian government is talking about. That if they see those numbers rising again, they will go into reverse. But what's been nice to see is that each region has some level of autonomy in what they can do on their own. If they see that things are working, that they can loosen up a little bit more. For example, there's one region in the north of the country which is the most autonomous region. It's a part of Italy, but still kind of separate from Italy in a legal sense. And they actually have been pretty open for at least a week now, if I'm not mistaken. And so that's been interesting to see that the numbers there actually haven't changed too much since they've opened up. So hopefully that doesn't become a concern here for us. I hope not, at least.
Let's talk about jobs in the economy. Here in
Oof.
California, the unemployment rate is about 14.7%. We've heard the governor say it could go high as, 22, 23, 24%. Essentially, 1 out of 4 Californians would be out of work. What's the
Mm.
situation where you are in Italy, and how much focus is being put on getting people back to work?
So this has been a huge issue for sure, just because anyway, to start with, Italy has a huge unemployment issue to begin with. It is one of the most difficult countries to find work in Europe. Uh, in the north, things are much better. It's much easier to find work. In the south, they have a very different situation. It's one country with two different situations in some senses. And so there have been a lot of people, especially in the South, who have been hit very hard. I can't say specific numbers about how the unemployment rates, but the biggest thing is that you have seen here in Italy that there are a lot of people who work off contract and that just work under the table. And so those people, along with everybody else living from paycheck to paycheck, including myself, we have been through a situation where there's no guarantee of work. We don't know what's going on. I personally have taken a financial hit of, I would say, anywhere from like 85 to 90%, like that I'm earning less than I was before. And so there are a lot of people that very early on were running out of funds and were unable to even purchase a loaf of bread. We did see in Sicily one or two raids done by locals on supermarkets that they were just they were so hungry they had no other option but to go and try to take something.
Right.
Thankfully, the government in many parts of the country was able to step in and create a system kind of resembling something that already existed here, which is similar to food stamps, so that people can go and purchase food through governmental support, because the social system here in Italy is very strong. It's much more ingrained into various aspects of life, from health to other benefits that a person can experience throughout their life.
Yeah. I know here in the United States, I mean, in the Bay Area alone, we've been reporting on food banks saying we're serving three
Right.
times as many clients as we used to in the past. In other parts of the country, I haven't seen this here at home, but you see long lines of cars waiting outside food banks. I mean, someone is in a car waiting for 3 hours in line until they can finally pull up to the front of the food bank. They get groceries for a week and then they drive away. So just,
Right.
and I think a lot of people, certainly, when I think of Italy, I think of, fine wines and beautiful
Right, of
people and
course.
lavish dishes, and you don't
This
think
is something in
about,
my videos I always talk about. There's this beautiful side to Italy that I call the pizza, the pasta, and the amore, because like
yes,
that's the quintessence of what it is. That's
yes.
that's at its core like what everybody loves about Italy.
Right. But a lot of people don't know that there are people who are struggling, who are
Yeah.
living very much day to day. And then you add the coronavirus crisis on
Yeah.
top of that, people can be in a very, very desperate situation. I
No,
think
and
here in the Bay Area, I mean, living
Mhm.
in Marin County, you have to make at the very least low six figures to afford any sort of a decent apartment or home. And then,
One of the reasons I'm
once you
not
take
there.
that away, well, yeah, exactly. If you can find one, and then if you cut your income, in half or by more, people all of a
Yeah.
sudden are in a very, very desperate situation.
Yeah, no, and this is something that, of course, has hit Italy in this way, because Italy also not only just relies on some local industries, but one of the biggest drivers of income here in Italy is the tourism industry. So places like Venice have practically completely shut down because people are just not able to go there. Milan, Rome. So all of these people who rely on that industry are having to think of new ways and trying to make money. Even one of my subscribers recently commented on my last video saying that his parents own a restaurant in Venice, and at this point they're kind of between a rock and a hard place. They can't afford to reopen their restaurant, but they can't afford not to reopen their
Right.
restaurant. So a lot of people are facing very difficult decisions between very difficult decisions.
Yeah. What are you looking forward to in stage three? What is sort of, I mean, it's a joke, but it's not a joke. You hear an awful lot of talk here in the Bay Area. People want hair salons to reopen and people want gyms to reopen. What in Italy are people sort of, hanging their hopes on?
So I would say there's a kind of similar sentiment here. I've been somebody who's cut my own hair for the most part for the past few years anyway, so I'm not too worried about going to get my hair cut. I've even been thinking about growing it out, but I know there are a lot of people in the country who have been demanding and have been doing underground haircuts and going to. One person who I work with has been getting his sister to cut his hair. So people have been trying to find those kind of alternatives, but I know even some family members of mine who would be dyeing their hair normally may be looking forward to trying to figure out how to get a style back of some sort.
Right, right, right. Is there anything you'd like to leave us with as someone who is, at least one full step ahead of where we are here in the Bay Area? Is life slowly getting back to normal? Is normal like it was 6 months ago never going to come back? What's your best, you know, thought that you'd like to pass on to those of us who are soon going to be in your footsteps?
So I think something to maybe kind of repeat something I've spoken to you guys at KTVU before, that it's something where we all need to work together, and that we need to just take those steps, but we need to be take them slowly, and patience. The most difficult part of this whole thing is going to be patience. It's something I'm struggling with. I know I'm fed up with this. I know a lot of other people are fed up with this, but slowly, slowly, we'll figure out some form of new normal, and maybe we'll figure out something from this whole situation, this horrible situation, that can maybe help us in the future to avoid something similar.
I
That's my
agree.
hope.
I agree completely, and I echo your words. It's been a joy talking with you,
It's been great to
Rafael
speak
Di
with you too.
Furia in
Thank you
Rovigo.
for having me
You're
back.
a former Marin County resident, now living in Italy permanently, content creator and media advisor. Thank you. I guess I should say ciao instead of goodbye.
Ciao e grazie mille.
There you go. Thank you so much. And for more information on our talk, you can find it at coronavirusnow.com.